BSP cited the need for complete due process as a rationale for the long closure process of Banco Filipino. It claimed that the standard of extraordinary diligence in banking supervision was a factor for the length of time it took to close Banco Filipino. This due process took almost 9 years. This process was so long and slow, to the point of negligence. It also enlarged the problem. Had Banco Filipino been closed earlier, the ultimate cost to uninsured depositors may not have been as great. At the time of closure, the estimated deposit base of Banco Filipino was 15 billion pesos, or 8.5 billion pesos bigger than its deposit base of 6.5 billion pesos in 2004. The estimated uninsured deposit base, at the time of closure, was 5.6 billion pesos, or roughly 86% of the 2004 total deposit base. The Philippine Deposit Insurance Corporation could have saved a substantial portion of the estimated 9.4 billion pesos it is to pay out to insured depositors from its deposit insurance fund and from public funds. The regulators were powerless with Banco Filipino. They could not compel the bank, a publicly listed firm in a highly regulated sector, to change the management responsible for the bank's precarious financial condition. They could not get Banco Filipino to significantly reduce executive compensation, running at 600 million pesos a year, while the bank was losing over 2 billion pesos a year, every year. BSP could not persuade Banco Filipino to realize the supposed value of its acquired assets through genuine asset sales that will recapitalize the bank with hard cash instead of inflated properties. It could not mandate Banco Filipino to reverse the deferment of its 12.1 billion pesos in operating losses, despite numerous monetary board directives to do so. BSP could not get Banco Filipino to issue audited financial statements since 2002. It did not force Banco Filipino to resume holding formal board meetings that have not taken place since 2002. It could not do this, despite the presence of a BSP-installed controller, as a condition of the rescue package it extended Banco Filipino in 2002. Banco Filipino faced no repercussions for its actions. It correctly assumed that financial assistance will always be forthcoming. As late as September 2010, despite no visible improvement in the bank's operations, Banco Filipino was able to negotiate a rehabilitation plan with BSP and the Monetary Board that seemed to leave the bank's board and management intact, allow the deferral or capitalization of losses, allow the recapitalization of the bank with real estate properties. The main reason why this plan was not operationalized was only because Banco Filipino refused to drop its 18 billion damage suit against BSP and its officials, as part of BSP's precondition for the adoption of the rehabilitation plan. The only thing that had changed was that Banco Filipino, at that time, seemed willing to drop its damage claim against the BSP as a precondition for the adoption of the rehabilitation plan. It seems that the overriding concern of the regulators was the removal of the risk of punitive litigation and legal harassment. That concern overshadowed the safety and soundness of the banking system, the defrauding of minority investors, and the depletion of the deposit insurance funds. Meanwhile, the minority shareholders were stymied at every turn. Their fraud complaint was characterized, by both the media and by the regulators, as a family squabble among the members of the Aguirre family. The real issue, however, was massive fraud. The BSP and the Monetary Board blocked numerous efforts of minority shareholders to assess the true financial condition of the bank and bring about a change in bank management and policies. Minority shareholders fought for their shareholder rights all the way to the Supreme Court. However, on June 19, 2009, in the case of Caruga v. Arsenas, the Supreme Court ruled that all bank fraud cases are the exclusive jurisdiction of the BSP, and only the BSP. The minority shareholder had no recourse to the regional trial courts, even if the BSP did not act on their complaints. This means that the BSP is the sole venue for resolving disputes among bank shareholders. This ruling applies to all bank fraud cases. It represents a severe diminution of investor protections, particularly for foreign investors who lack the political connections of their local partners. It may dissuade further investment into the Philippine banking sector. Regulators want Congress to amend the degree of diligence required from BSP and its officers in bank supervision duties, from extraordinary to reasonable. It also wants better mechanisms for the quick resolution of problem banks. For instance, the Philippine Deposit Insurance Corporation supports a Closed Bank Liquidation Act that ties all laws with respect to bank liquidation in one comprehensive act. The system is broken. Bank management can commit fraud with relative impunity. Regulators are reluctant to act in a timely manner, for fear of years of punitive litigation and legal harassment. Minority shareholders have no legal recourse to fight bank fraud if the regulators refuse to act. This will lead to a continued erosion of confidence in the banking system. It fosters a control fraud environment, wherein a bank owner or executive uses the bank he controls as a weapon to commit fraud. A determined and criminally minded bank owner can steal from his own bank and get away with it. The fraud will exist and go unreported for years on end. Regulators are unable to stop the fraud. The fraud only stops when the bank collapses. In the Philippines, the best way to rob a bank might be to own one.